I'm ready.
Okay. Dawn, thank you so much for your time today. It's always a pleasure to see you.
You too. Thank you.
So I wanted to talk about a blog post that you made recently. It's called The 5 Qualities for Personal Transformation During a Crisis. And obviously with us going through COVID-19 and all the stuff that's going on, I really like the way you kind of identified, you broke out like 5 different qualities that we could all cultivate during this time. So kind of use this time to, maybe do some self-reflection, some self-improvement, some things that we could work on. And the first one, and we'll just kind of go through these or unpack them, as people like to say.
Yeah. I actually like that term.
You like?
I do.
Yeah. Let's unpack this.
It sounds fun.
It does. It does. All right. So the first one is silence. And this one is really interesting to me because, I have found that in times of my life where I surround myself with a lot of noise, honestly, it could be even like when I'm working out on the bike and I've got music going and I'm on my phone, like checking Facebook or checking emails. So I've got like all this stimulus in addition to trying to follow a specific workout on my bike trainer. And versus times when I either ride outside where I don't have that stimulus other than, just the open road and the trees and, maybe a few cars that might pass by. I don't have all that stimulus. And how I feel after the 2 different scenarios is very different. I mean, even though they both get my heart rate up, they both make me sweat, they're both good for me physically. There's a certain method of me riding outside.
Yeah, for sure.
That I don't get when I'm riding on the trainer. And I think, the fresh air is part of it, but I think a lot of it does have to do with just this noise that I surround myself with. You wanna elaborate maybe on what could be going on there?
Yeah. Well, all of that stimulus keeps our brain constantly active. And especially if we're taking, substances in addition to that, caffeine is one that it's so prevalent, in our society. And I'm not saying all caffeine is bad, but you have to recognize what it's doing to your brain, and so caffeine and any stimulus like social media or television, it's keeping our brain in this super, super hyperactive mode where it's not really the space where creativity lives. It's not the space where wisdom lives. That's where our get it done brainwave state is, like hyper get stuff done, which is sometimes useful for being productive, but it's not the space where I feel like as a collective we need to be right now, which is really in a space of thoughtfulness and reflection. And, I said silence because it's to me, it's such a powerful state of being. And yet it's one that, particularly in Western culture, we really devalue. We really devalue silence. And so, when you hear people say things like, oh, I get my best ideas in the shower, think about why, and I used to say that too, because I also didn't take any time for silence. I was very trained in the way that society expects us to be, always go, 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 always reading something, always talking, or, in meetings or, running errands, whatever. Very few pauses in my life other than taking a shower. And so, that's why people say they get the best ideas in the shower, because that's the only time usually in their day where they have no other stimulus and they just allow their minds to kind of work. and be a little bit freer without expectation of delivering on productivity, you know? And so we can create that state outside of the shower. One that you mentioned was a great one, which is, you know, doing exercise in nature or outside is great. I mean, I've been taking daily walks outside, and I either don't listen to music. I definitely don't listen to anybody talking, like podcasts or anything like that. If I'm listening to music, it's usually meditation music or classical music or something that has no words. But I actually like to listen to the sounds of nature around me, listen to the birds and the rustle of the leaves in the trees and that kind of thing. So that's a great way to cultivate silence, is to exercise, particularly outside, because then you're also getting that connection with nature, which is really important for us. And meditation is something that I highly recommend for everyone. I'm actually a meditation coach, and meditation has changed my life personally. It's changed the way that I think completely. You know, my mind used to be overrun with anxiety and fears and worries and worst case scenarios of what ifs, you know, what if this terrible thing happens? What if this terrible thing happens? I mean, I would spin my mind around in so many different directions on outcomes that never ever came to fruition. And yet most of my mental energy was spent on, what if all these horrible things happen? You know, and I had the anxiety disorder, you know, and that's part of what your brain looks like when you have anxiety disorder. So I'm happy to say that I don't have anxiety disorder any longer, and I no longer need therapy. I no longer need medication. And that's a large part in due to having a daily meditation practice. You know, and meditation helps you clear your mind. It helps you control your thoughts better. It helps you have more positive thoughts. It also has a lot of physical healing benefits, because you're putting your brainwave state into a much deeper, slower brainwave state where actually your body can heal. And so that beta brainwave state that I mentioned earlier, where you know, when you're on caffeine or sugar, or you're like on social media, or texting or whatever, you know, that's like productivity mode. But where we need to be in order to get to our inner wisdom and to get to some mental clarity and healing and perspective is much lower brainwave state. So in meditation, we can get to like a delta brainwave state, which is the state that's, or theta. Theta and delta are the two kind of states that you can get into in deep meditation, where your brain is much slower and your body starts to heal, your mind starts to heal, your body relaxes, you let go of a lot of that tension that you hold in your muscles and your joints and all of that. So yeah, I mean, I meditate an hour a day minimum. You know, now I'm trying to do more since we've got a little bit luxury of time, extra time. But that's not to intimidate anyone. You don't have to start with an hour. It took me a while to work up to an hour a day. So, you know, start with 5 or 10 minutes. And the more important piece is doing it consistently. So you do it consistently for a certain duration, you're going to notice results.
And I'll be the first to admit, I have not been a consistent person as far as meditation goes. I was meditating somewhat regularly, probably about 4 or 5 years ago. It was actually during a meditation that I heard that inner voice that kind of told me I really need to change my career and follow my passion, because I was really kind of struggling with where I fit in with the company that I was working for at the time. And it was in that meditation that specific, I can remember it so vividly and clearly, because I was in my old home in Mississippi in a room that I had designated just for exercising. And I had a yoga mat in there, and I was in there, and I had been doing meditation very consistently at that point. And I can remember just having this inner voice tell me, you know, that I should follow my passion and be true to myself, and which is kind of, you know, part of the reason why the name of my company is My True Self, be true to myself.
Oh, nice.
And it was through that, you know, I really changed the trajectory of my life and my career. I was meditating for a while, and then I kind of, when I moved out here to Washington, I kind of got out of it. And what I found was that, and it reminded me of when I first started meditating, initially, it's really hard to really quiet the mind, you know. Can you maybe offer some tips for how to get past that point where you can truly quiet your mind and be in silence?
Yeah, well, to be honest, quieting your mind completely in meditation can take years. So what you really want to do is learn how to focus on things that are beneficial. So like, for instance, releasing stress from the body. So it doesn't mean you have to completely shut off your mind, but you're redirecting your mind to focus on your breath, for instance. So the first, 5 minutes or so of the meditations that I lead are really just about focusing on the breath, deepening the breath, being intentional about our inhale and our exhale, and slowing down our breath, because a lot of times we're doing really fast, shallow breathing. We don't even realize it's kind of just unconscious. That's the way we tend to breathe. And that actually makes us more tense. So first 5 minutes, if you only have 5 minutes period to meditate, what I would recommend is just focus on your breath, focus on deepening it, focus on getting a really, really good inhale, and then focus on exhaling as much breath as possible in your exhale, and just slow it down and go deep, deep, deep into your, into your lower abdomen, your diaphragm area, not in this, a lot of us tend to breathe up here, in our, like in our throat or our chest, we need to like actually bring the breath all the way down, into our abdomen in order to really calm the body and calm the mind. So the first stage of any meditation is usually just helping to calm the body, because once the body relaxes and releases its tension, then the mind can start to slow down. The mind kind of follows the body in that respect of relaxation. So that's the first thing I would say is you don't necessarily have to stress about not thinking about anything, but you can use meditation techniques that direct your mind into productive things. So like thinking about how to relax your body. And you can also tell yourself, like in the meditation I lead, we actually go, through each part of the body and ask it to relax. So we'll say like feet relax, feet relax, feet relax, and just send like, intentions for relaxation to each part of your body after you have focused on your breath. So, and that will really just help to, you might notice like, oh, I'm like normally sitting like this at my computer, and then if you're like focusing on your breath and focusing on, okay, I'm going to relax my shoulders, your shoulders start to go back into alignment. You'll start to feel some of that tension melt away. So that's one really good, easy, very easy meditation technique that anyone can do. And you don't have to worry about, oh, I have to be an expert meditator in order to do that. You can literally just do it. Anyone doesn't, there's no learning curve to that. So that's one thing I would say. People tend to get intimidated by meditation, and it's maybe just because they have only heard of some techniques that are, more honestly advanced techniques where you actually can get to like the quiet pond state of mind is what we call in our tradition, like a Buddha-like mind. But that can take years to actually get to that point where you can do that. So don't get intimidated. Don't like get intimidated by that. That's not necessarily the immediate goal. The immediate goal is to redirect the mind into positive things. And so in the meditation I lead, then we also use a technique to quiet the mind. So you can't just necessarily just say, okay, mind, stop, and like will it to stop, you need some sort of technique. And so in the meditation I lead, and I also have on my website like a 4-minute meditation, which uses some of this technique, is we use the image of a river to cleanse the mind. And so you need these aids, these aids to direct the mind. And you still may not get to a completely thoughtless state, but you're gonna at least slow it down. with having some kind of image like a river running through your mind, or sending light into your mind, whatever image, works for you, but something to focus on instead of focusing on your to-do list. It's just redirecting your mind. And then the last thing I would say is, there's also like visualization techniques that you can use that stimulate your creativity. So there's guided meditations out there that, will take you through like a nature walk, for instance. And again, it's not about completely quieting the mind. It's about redirecting the mind into using your intuition and your imagination and your third eye, which is your, your ability to see without seeing, right? And so we're just sending the mind into positive direction. So yeah, don't get hung up on like, my mind has to be completely quiet, because a lot of the meditation techniques that I use are actually not what we would call passive meditation, which is quiet meditation. They're more active meditation. So visualizations, or intentionally calming down the body, or, slowing down the mind. But yeah.
I appreciate that, because I can remember when I first started meditating, I was kind of taught that technique of quieting the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very, very frustrating, because I could not shut it off. And I can remember the first time I learned it, must have been about 10 or more years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I was living, I think it was about 15 years ago. And I remember trying it, and I got so frustrated that I just kind of gave up, and then I went back to it again. And then I would kind of come and go. And I was very consistent, like I said, a few years ago when I was living in Mississippi. And I felt like I did get to a point where I wouldn't say I was in a completely no mind state, but I had moments where I felt like I was in that no mind state. And it was like the best feeling. I mean, it was, it was one of those things where, you just kind of feel really connected to something deeper. That you normally wouldn't notice or feel connected to in daily life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can definitely get to that, and there are meditation techniques for getting to that state. But yeah, it's hard to maintain it for long periods of time without a lot of practice. And so walking in to a meditation practice, you don't necessarily want to start with what I would consider a more advanced meditation technique that requires you to sit and, try to have a quiet pond mind, or go into avoid meditation, or, try to get to like a Buddha-like state. And a lot of those meditation techniques, originated in the East thousands and thousands of years ago, when people had a much different style of life, right? And so trying to walk in as a Westerner in present day to a 3,000-year-old meditation technique that was, created in China by monks or whatever, like, is not necessarily realistic for somebody to start out with. Yeah, maybe you can progress to that stage where you can get there for sure. But that's why I really like the style that I teach, which is called max meditation. And because it goes into 5 different stages, and it progressively leads you into a deeper and deeper meditation state, and it gently guides you in there. It doesn't expect you to like just shut off your mind. It's not a light switch. For most of us, we can't just do that. It's not that easy, because we haven't trained our mind. So we have to train our mind progressively to get it to a point where we can quiet it.
Well, it definitely sounds more accessible and less frustrating.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So in your article, you're suggesting to be silent for about 1 to 2 hours a day, of which maybe at least 10 minutes. And if you're able to, more be in meditation.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, and there's lots of things you can do in that silence. You can go for a walk, you can go for a bike ride in nature, like we talked about. Yoga is great, meditation, prayer, I would still consider silence. You're just having a heart-to-heart conversation with source or God, or, higher power, whatever you connect with. And so any of those activities, any kind of exercise, as long as, I would just encourage people, a lot of people exercise anyway. I would encourage them to try exercising in silence, you know, try the bike rides outside, try the walks outside with no music, or if you do music, make sure that it's, you know, something that's going to aid you in your thought process and your opening up. Like classical music is great for that, or new age meditation music with no words is good. But, you know, the having to feel like we're always listening to podcasts or heart pumping music, you know, it's actually not going to help you get to a place of quiet and a place of stillness where you can access your inner wisdom. Because the whole point of silence is to access your inner wisdom. And so something you said earlier, I want to circle back to that, because you said that you had this great moment where you knew what to do next with your career through meditation. And that's the whole point, is the outer world is always going to try to impose you know, things on us, things to do or things to think or things to buy or whatever, you know, but none of that is really us. The only thing that's us is coming from the inside, you know, and so that's where we can get our authentic, you know, inner guidance and wisdom, is by connecting to ourselves. And that can only happen in the silence, and really ideally for extended periods of silence, you know. So that's why I meditate for at least an hour a day. And nowadays I'm also walking for an hour a day. So that's great, you know, so I'm getting like 2 hours at minimum of silence a day. So it's helping me open up more to who I really am, reflect on what I want to do next, having more creative inspiration, more just, I don't know, rejuvenation too, because in the silence you can rejuvenate, you know, you can get out of that rat race.
Yeah, absolutely. So the second quality that you mentioned is grace.
Mm.
And what I really liked about this one, you included some specific questions to ask yourself as part of a light meditation. But when you define grace as a state of being, a way of being gentle, forgiving, and compassionate, and to take care of yourself to the best of your ability, that really resonated with me a lot, because you know, in doing this without judgment, and I may have mentioned this to you before, but when this whole COVID thing happened, it was like the first week I was in denial about it. I was just like, oh, this is crazy. This is not happening. This is just insane. And then I would say the next week, I just went into this funk, or I was maybe just a little depressed. I was walking around in my slippers, drinking beer, eating peanuts. Like, what am I going to do with my life? And then I woke up one morning and I was just like, you know, I think I'm going to start a YouTube channel. You know, my husband had planted the seed in my head a long time ago. And then I just started doing it and just got really excited about it. But I would say that I did feel, you know, a little bit of guilt, you know, wasting. I mean, I know in the scheme of things, a week isn't a big deal, but it was kind of like, I can remember kind of feeling bad about being in a funk, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so the questions that you ask, you know, about, you know, how are you feeling? What emotions are you feeling? You know, how is your mind right now? And, you know, what can I do today to be more connected to joy, light, and purpose? I thought were excellent and on point. And something, you know, I'm going to save these for, I mean, you know, life happens and you go through disappointments, and, you know, anything you want to add to just the whole topic of grace, that, you know, why did you include that in this article that you wrote?
I included it because I'm just watching what's happening on social media right now, and I see a lot of arguments, a lot of people really digging into opinions that they believe are facts on both, you know, whatever side of the argument you're on. It's like usually they're just two people arguing with opinions saying that they're facts, you know. And so there's a lot of argument, there's a lot of digging in, there's a lot of judgment of self and others. and depression too, and, right now we just need to be kind to ourselves and others. And so if that means you slept 12 hours, when you normally sleep 7, so what? It means your body needed it, right? So, or you ate a whole pint of ice cream in front of the TV when you would normally never do that. So what, or someone was unkind to you. You don't know what's going on in people's lives ever, but particularly now. Everyone, and what I said in the blog article is that everyone on this planet is suffering in one way or another.
Yeah.
Whether they're pretty much universally, every person on this planet right now is suffering deeply because of this crisis that's happening, this health crisis. So whether they actually have the virus, or they know someone who has the virus, or they were laid off of work, or they are just afraid of what might happen, that any of those things could happen to them or someone that they love. there's all these emotions that are going on right now in the collective consciousness that are a lot of fear based, and then a lot of judgment too. And so we really, really, really need to, allow that grace for ourselves and for each other, because this is something that we've never experienced. None of us have ever experienced anything like this in our lifetime. So are we going to do it perfectly? No. Is it going to feel easy? No. It's hard. We're going through a really tough time in history. And so just being kind to ourselves and to each other is really what needs to happen. And that's, to me, is grace. That's just allowing the space for things to not be perfect, allowing the space for things to be ugly, and trying to be kind to others. And then when people are unkind to you, trying not to lash back out at them, trying to walk away or respond with forgiveness and kindness, which can be hard, when you're suffering yourself too. But I really feel that's needed right now. And so the more that we can do that, the more we can get through this with unity and compassion on the other side of it.
Yeah. Well, I will say that, hey, if I could sleep 12 hours, I would love it. I'm one
I
of
think
those.
I did that last week. I think I
Oh,
literally
God.
slept. I mean, that hasn't been my normal every day, but that happened one day and I was like, wow.
Oh my gosh. I would love it if I could sleep 12 hours. Yeah, I'm one of those that, I'm lucky if I get 7 hours, 7 or 8 hours. Most nights it's kind of a six-ish, 6.5 hours.
Yeah.
I usually sleep very deeply, so it's a good quality sleep. I just kind of wish I can get another hour or two tacked onto that.
Yeah.
All right. So the third quality you mentioned is reflection. And I kind of feel like this one relates a lot to the first one around silence.
Yeah, because you have to be silent in order to reflect, and to order to access a state where you can reflect. Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little more about some of the questions that you identified, in terms of, feeling gratitude and, in terms of what I might be able to, kind of what you might be able to learn or receive as a part of this reflection?
Yeah, I think I had like 12 questions in there. I don't remember what they're. Do you want to pull out a few that stuck out to you?
Yeah. The ones that kind of stuck out with me were the gratitude one. What am I grateful for right now? What is this time trying to show or teach me? I thought that was a really good one. And that was actually, I would say that was the one for me that, kind of prompted me. I would say it got me out of the funk. And I didn't, obviously you hadn't written this when all that happened, but it was kind of like, I could remember, I spent that week and then I woke up and I just came to this realization, like, I'm supposed to be doing something different, obviously. I'm not supposed to be walking around in my slippers all day and, eating peanuts and drinking. So,
Although if
so
we go back to the comment about grace, that's okay that you did that for a week. It's not a big deal.
yeah, it's not a big deal in the scheme of things. I
Yeah.
know. But you know, and then the questions around what in my life before this crisis was not serving me as well as what was serving me. So it kind of, I thought the questions were very specific in terms of thinking about you know, quarantine, COVID-19 crisis, and kind of where am I going next in terms of that. Do you want to elaborate a little more on
Sure.
some of those?
Yeah. Well, I mean, unless you're, you know, an essential worker on the front lines, you know, you probably have a lot more time right now. And so when you have more time, it's the perfect opportunity to really reflect. And the other thing is, our world is not going to go back to the way it was, because it just can't, right? You can't go through something this dramatic, this life altering. We're all kind of going through an existential crisis right now, you know, individually and collectively. We're really being forced to examine what was serving us in our lives and what wasn't, you know, both individually and globally. And so the world is not going to go back to the way it was. There's not going to be just a hard reset, you know, where everything falls back in place. And I don't think it should, because we are meant to use this time to learn something. We are meant to use this time to realize what wasn't working and change that moving forward. So, you know, the best times to think about how to create something are really in the times of struggle and also in the times of silence. And so this is the perfect time for journaling. I mean, I love journaling as a tool for reflection. That's the number one tool that I find works for me for reflection. Other people might have other tools that they like, but I like journaling, which is why I put those questions in there, because I think I like to have prompts for journaling. So I either look for other people's prompts or I create my own prompts, but I like to journal around a question. And so you can create your own prompts. Maybe that list that I, you know, posted will inspire some additional questions. I hope it does, but that's a starting point. Because yeah, we do have the opportunity to look at the world differently and say, where does it need to change? And then also our lives. Because a lot of us were doing things on autopilot that now that we've hit the pause button, we can look at and say, ooh, that didn't work for me. That didn't make me feel good, or that didn't give me what I needed, you know, to help to feel good about myself, or to have enough time with my family, or to focus on the priorities and the values that I really care about. Those things were not in alignment. A lot of those things that we were doing on autopilot before this. So, you know, I'm putting a call out to the people that I know, who I know are ready to step up when this is over, to change your own life, and then also do what you can to change the world around you to be better, because it does need to be better. You know, it needs to be more sustainable. It needs to be more kind. It needs to be more harmonious. You know, we need to be in unity. And this virus is showing us that we are so interconnected. We're so interconnected. And so it's really showing us the ramifications of our actions to ourselves and one another. And, you know, in metaphysics, we talk about that a lot, how connected we are. And in spirituality, we talk about it a lot, like how our energy, how our thoughts, how our actions affect everyone. And so, you know, what I believe is that anything that we do, think, or say, or believe, if it hurts one person, it hurts all of us in some way. And so we're starting to see I would say the beginnings of people in mass waking up to how connected we are, in karmically and in our destiny, and how connected we are to this planet, you know, and how even in like a month, the planet is starting to heal. You know, the ozone layers starting to heal, the oceans are starting to heal, you know, animals are starting to take back some of their territory that we've taken over. And so we have the opportunity to say, how do we live more in balance in our lives individually, but also with the world, so that we can sustain the human race for, thousands more years, or however many more years we're meant to be on this planet. But we're certainly not meant to, I don't believe, die in 30 years because our water is too polluted and our air is too polluted and there's not enough land, for good food. And, I don't think that's how it's supposed to end. And I don't want it to end that way. And I know, in this moment of pause, people are actually able to think about that and the reality of it.
Yeah. And I would just add, what sparked in my mind as you were talking was that, a lot of times growth and big change happens when you go through these periods of misery,
for sure,
and pain and misery. And it's, for me, what's been so remarkable is the fact that everybody literally just stopped what they were doing. And, yeah, you've got some exceptions of people, having gatherings and being out and, potentially spreading the virus. But when you look at the majority of the population in the country, and even the world for that matter, the whole staying home and quarantine, most people got on board with that. I mean, most people just said, hey, I don't want to infect anybody. I don't want to harm anyone else. I don't want to be harmed, I don't want to bring something home where I'm potentially harming an elder parent or something like that. And it was kind of like everybody just, in such a short period of time got on board with it. And just imagine, when you look at some of the other issues that we face, and we don't have to get into the details about this now, but you just look at some of the major issues contributing to things like climate change, and just, even just people's health and well-being. And if everyone just kind of got on board with that, what a significant change, just a huge, change that could be for not just the country, but for the world.
Yeah.
If more people were to embrace things like the meditation and the reflection and the things that you have outlined here, it might be a temporary period where you're struggling with something, but it could become so much more transformative in a positive way.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say, the goal is not to, like we talked about grace earlier, the goal is not to be perfect during this time. I mean, I'm having my struggles too, my internal struggles, and I'm like being taught, areas where emotionally and spiritually I really need to grow, and that can be painful. So there's going to be pain. This time is not going to be without pain. So that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is use this as an opportunity to learn and to become better for yourself, and then help the world be better on the other side of this. So we can't avoid it. So we might as well do what we can to make the most of it, and really learn what the lessons that this time is trying to teach us.
Okay. Let's move on to the fourth quality, which is hope. Hope is about optimism, and we already kind of talked a little bit about that. What suggestions do you have for someone who's struggling to find hope in this situation?
Well, I mean, one thing that really helps to start to connect to a place where you can see hope is gratitude. So just taking the time to be grateful for what you already have. And so ask yourself, what's good about my life? What am I grateful for today? And even if it's just small, it doesn't have to be anything major. I mean, it could be, wow, I'm grateful that, I was able to order groceries and someone brought it to me. and I didn't actually have to go out, or maybe I'm grateful that I got a text message from a friend I haven't heard from in 2 years, whatever. It doesn't have to be like a major thing, but just looking at your life, starting to with some more perspective about what's already good in it, can really help get you to a point where you can be hopeful. Because when you start to see the good and the beauty in life, then you can start to get to a place where you can expand into hope. And so, so gratitude is good, just getting in nature, like just having perspective, because sometimes we just get so wrapped up in the minutia of the current drama or the current issues. And by the way, the issue is not just the virus. The issues are all of the things swirling around the virus, the fear, the lack of trust in other people and establishments, and gossip and rumors, and pointing fingers and politics, and like all that stuff is swirling around this virus, creating a lot of negativity. And that can really drain your reserves of hope, if you focus on that stuff too much. So I would say avoiding. So it's as much about like seeking out things that are positive as it is about avoiding things that are negative. So, honestly, I'm just ruthlessly, I had a hard time getting that word out, ruthlessly using the snooze for 30 days option in Facebook right now. Because I'm like, if you're putting junk in my feed, not that I'm going to unfriend you, but you got to get over that. And let's see if 30 days is enough, what I mean? Because I don't need that junk in my feed right now. I'm trying to consume positivity. And so think about what you're consuming. What are you consuming? Are you consuming positivity, or are you consuming negativity? Not that you need to bury your head in the sand. You should be aware of what's happening, especially in regards to actions that you need to take. Be aware of what's happening in your local community and even in the world. It's good to have a pulse on that, but don't get so wrapped up and absorbed in it that it's consuming your thoughts and it's changing your emotions to be from negative to positive and draining your hope. So doing the things that are positive, doing things that make you happy, that make you laugh. I think I talk about in the blog articles, like laugh. People need to be laughing right now. So I'm getting a kick out of a lot of the memes that are coming.
Oh my gosh, they are
I
so
share a lot
awesome.
of those memes
I know.
because they're so funny. And I'm like, I'm not a person who can create those kind of things, but when I see them and I think that they're, going to make somebody else laugh, I totally share them. And so little things like that right now are really good for hope, because it makes you think, okay, if we can find the joy and the laughter in situations that are this dark, and this bleak, we can still find time for laughter and joy and kindness and beauty. A lot of the museums are opening up their stuff online, and symphonies and operas, and so there's so much art, and bands and stuff are playing online for free. There's so much like free, cool art and culture that's happening right now. Tap into that, tap into beauty, tap into what inspires you, and just try to stay away from the negativity. Look at the positive sides of humanity, because there's so many positive sides of humanity. So if you can focus on that, you will be hopeful. And so but it requires you to be intentional. It requires you to use the snooze button for 30 days if you need to on somebody, because they can't stop arguing, or they can't stop, judging or spreading, negativity, whatever it is. So just really, more than ever right now, be really careful about what you're consuming, and be consuming positivity as much as possible.
Yeah, and as far as the funny memes, I will say that one of the things that I've learned from this experience is that it has created more solidarity for me, with people that, I barely interacted with. I've friended a lot of people on Facebook, and some people, I've been very active with, engaging, for a long time. So But then there are people that I've friended that I've not necessarily engaged with that often for one reason or another. But it's kind of like it's brought this sense of family and solidarity around, just something humorous that everybody can relate to, regardless of where you are in the country or the world.
Yeah,
So
I'm so happy you said that. It's so funny because I was noticing like the first week or so, people kept saying, oh, my posts are getting flagged, or they're getting, things that were totally innocuous were getting flagged as spam. And I was in software design for 20 years, so I know how the technology works. And I figured out like the first week and people were like, oh, Facebook, blah, 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 is like banning it, as if there's a human being sitting there like manually flagging everything. No, it doesn't work like that. But their algorithms were not set to believe that people across all these different boundaries could be talking about the same thing at once. They were set to believe that people are divided into these, little boxes based on demographics, age and region and gender and what you eat,
politics
and and so all of a sudden people are sharing a lot of the same content, and none of that stuff really matters. And so I think Facebook addressed it pretty quickly. I noticed like within a week or two, people stopped complaining about that, but they had to adjust their no, I don't know anybody who works at Facebook who told me this. I just observed it, and I know enough about software development to be able to infer this, but I believe what happened was that Facebook had to adjust their algorithms, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. It's like Facebook had to change their algorithms to believe that people can be more united, can overcome these, what I think are really trivial boundaries, but that were very real before this crisis happened, because people made them real. And so if we can create boundaries, we can tear them down. And so yes, I think unity is a big part of being able to see the hope in the situation, because if we believe that we're all in it together, which we are, for better or for worse, we're all in it together, so we might as well make it better, so that's how I feel.
Absolutely. All right, let's go on to the last quality that you mentioned, which is responsibility. And I love what you said about we could either be a victim of it, or we can face it head on and overcome it. I love that because it's empowering. I mean, sometimes when you feel responsible for something, there's a little bit of a burden or a sense of obligation. But for me, I think when I read this in your blog, I felt like it was an empowering message.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, taking responsibility for our own lives. So, I mean, this type of scale of crisis happening to everyone at the same time is probably, hopefully, never going to happen in our lifetimes again, right? But little crises happen in our lives all the time. And so we give up our power to those crises on a regular basis. A lot of us do. We say, oh, well, that outside circumstance created this, and now I can't do anything. And so I really encourage people to not think about what they can't control. No, you can't control, how many people get this virus, or, how many people die from this virus, or how long it's going to take for your job to come back or find a new job. Maybe you can control it to some extent, but not completely. But you can control a lot of things. You control what actions you take to try to better your situation. You can control your attitude. You can control your daily habits. So what are you doing to get into a better mental place, a better physical place? We talked about a lot of those things that people can do to get into a better mental place. You can control how you're treating people. You can control how you're treating yourself during these times, and being gentle with yourself and kind and taking care of yourself, and taking care of others if that's something that's part of your scope of responsibility, doing that to the best of your ability. You can control lots of things still, and so focusing on that is really where I encourage people to put their time and their energy. And also thinking about taking what we talked about earlier with reflection, and also, incorporating hope into that, and planning out what your next steps are going to be when this is over, in terms of how you're going to shift your life. What actions are you going to take? So start planning for your new life. You know, those things that you've reflected on and decided don't serve you anymore. Start thinking about what you're going to do to change it. And if there's things you can do now, then do them. So like, for example, you realize, well, this is actually an opportunity for me to look at a career change, because I got laid off and maybe I don't want to go back to that same old job that was making me unhappy. Well, maybe you can be learning some new skills right now, you know? So that's just one example, but there's probably lots of things out there that people could look at and say, okay, what can I be doing to prepare myself for what's going to happen on the other side of this, and make sure that my life is going to be better as a result. So maybe it's building a new business, you know, or strengthening your friendships. You know, now that we all have time, we can get on the phone with each other more, you know, or family members. So whatever it is to you, whatever is important to you that you've reflected on, decide you want more of in your life after this, take responsibility for that and start working towards it. You know, lay the groundwork for it. Even if you can't fully build it right now, start laying the groundwork for it.
I love that, because really what you're saying is you can be intentional about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can be very intentional about it. So Dawn, thank you so much. This has been fabulous. I feel like I've gotten a therapy session. So if people want to connect with you or, you know, possibly engage you, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, they can definitely reach out to me through my website, which is www.AuroraLife, AuroraLove.Life. Let me say that again. www.AuroraLove.Life. And I have a contact form on there. They can also follow me on Facebook, and I post events. Right now I'm doing virtual meditation that I would love people to join. But yeah, and then I'm based in San Diego, California, but I do different healing modalities that I can do some distance healing modalities too, but I also can connect you with people in your area that do similar work. If you're looking for a meditation coach or energy healer, we have a whole network of people across the globe who are trained in the same work that I do. So I'm happy to connect people with the best person for them in their area.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Gigi.